Without further ado, President, Chair, and Associate of Global Education, College of Education at the University of Oregon, Dr. Yong Zhao.
Now, actually, I was thinking about, because you heard all this conversation about education, about change. You see all these different cool products, right? Every cool products. And it reminded me of a picture I took in South Africa. If you went to Cape Town airport, they had this great 3 panels of pictures like this. So it's an advertisement. Do you know it's for what? Can you imagine? Like if you get, we got some smart guys here, GPS, right? It's advertised for GPS. And then you have some more ones like this. It's smart advertisement, right? Remember those data systems, just like you saw that? Now, when I look at this, I said, this is pretty cool, right? Yesterday, I could have used a GPS. I almost got to Novato before I realized I was going the wrong way. You know? But the problem is, this is like education reform, right? It's like now we have a lot of GPSs. You have the data control, all this. You can know exactly where you are. So that's a perfect GPS. The problem with a GPS is the GPS doesn't know where we should go, right? So with all those data, how meaningful are those data? Are those we're supposed to do it? So I think I'm going to start, since I only have 20 minutes. I was telling actually Ken just now, my talk normally lasts about 20 days or 20 years, so it's kind of too short, 20 minutes. I'm going to give you the conclusion first, then I will say how far I can go with the reasoning. Or you have just to believe what I tell you, okay? So the first conclusion is that I think right now we're perfecting the GPS without knowing where we need to go. What I would call the managed to death phenomenon. We use a lot of technology to manage our people, trying to manage to death. The indicators, we all have good rhetoric about we need to liberate human beings, but if you look at from Race to the Top, to No Child Left Behind, to the state standards, all the tests, all the curriculum, all the data, all those cool tools, no matter how cool they are, we're still trying to manage human beings into something we think they should be. And I can tell you it doesn't really work. I grew up in China, in a small village. In the 1960s, 70s, China starved, about 30 to 50 million people starved to death because the communist government was very good at managing how to plant. In my village, we're told to grow 3 seasons of rice when the climate could only support 2. But they were measuring. They were doing, you were doing a lot more measuring. So for about 10 years, China suffered until 1978. A group of peasants got together and said, we're not going to do this. We're going to privately and secretly divide our land, do whatever we like. Overnight, Deng Xiaoping allowed to happen. Over 1 year, China solved its famine, hunger, and starvation problem. That's the liberation of individual entrepreneurs. I think today the first problem is that we are trying to manage people, trying to prescribe people, trying to prescribe kids, schools, and teachers, individuals, without believing they actually can do something. So that's the first message. Second message, so you like the conclusion, right? Man, people had to starve to get to the adolescent. That's a lot of people death in a lot of lives to get to me the conclusion. The next one has to do with, right now, I think this country in the U.S. is in a very pathetic state right now. California exception, maybe, I don't know. If you can't be excluded. We are basically giving up a great position to continue to be innovative. But at the same time, we're being seduced by something nonsensical. Like other countries, China, Finland, Singapore, Hong Kong, I can tell you, none of those countries has got what America has had. But now it's currently been destroyed by No Child Left Behind and Race to the Top, any other measurement. Because so far as Ken can tell you, come over to tell you, well, there's no school except the one probably I've seen in Larry's Rosenstock, San Diego, that has done this. All the schools so far, other countries, are not producing the type of people we need. All schools are semi-dead, if not dead yet. So we have to change that. The reason I say that is that we're not producing those peasants who are entrepreneurial and creative and global. We are producing good, takers. I have data for that, and that's not very good. And that's something we need to change. And the third point I want to say is that what we're trying to do in today's schools, even in California, is completely have isolated ourselves from other places. We're trying to fight an economic war with test scores so we can destroy others with good math scores or science scores. That's what we're trying to do. We're not being globally connected. We're not liberating human beings. So now that's the conclusion. What we need to do, basically, I just finished my book, so I can tell you this now. I think we need basically the type of people we need, what I call global, creative, and entrepreneurial. And the three things we can make that happen is, number one, student autonomy and choice and a voice of curriculum, student passion. Number two, product-oriented learning, which is more than project-based learning. That kids have to make things. They cannot just be consumers. They have to become creators. And last one is your campus should be global. The globe should be campus. Schools should be viewed as global enterprises. And how do we get there? My first question is, why didn't China have a big party? China has a big party. That's the Communist Party. I don't mean that one. I mean a party to celebrate. Because according to many American observers, China should have a great party. Why? Because China now becomes the mecca of education. You remember this? The PISA scores. About 2 years ago, year and a half ago, the most recent PISA was released, the data. China scored number one across the board. Knock off Finland of the first place. So China, Shanghai, people are still debating about this. Obama called this a Sputnik moment. Do you remember this? Well, he calls a lot of strange things, but this is one of the funny things I've heard. It's that the Chinese students are armed, flying in with math scores, going to come down to the U.S. I think that's the image he was trying to do. Arnie Duncan called it a wake-up call for Americans. If you look at this is the top 10 countries, okay, of all three categories, most recent PISA. If you want to find America, the U.S. is probably down in the basement somewhere. If you go down this screen, you cannot see it. It's way below. So supposedly, PISA has become the gold standard of education. I just was last week in Vancouver. We had a very interesting debate. A bunch of people from OECD, from England, at the AERA, American Educational Research Association conference, debating about, is PISA worth anything? Well, not much, by the way, according to my counting. Now, with this one, if you look at people now, like Mark Tucker from National Center for Education and Economy has been talking about what can we learn from these countries. Thomas Friedman said, what can we learn from top performing countries? What can we learn? Thomas Friedman said, actually from an OECD study, said, basically, if you don't have enough natural resources, your score go up. That's what I think, actually, that's not true. It's not true, and we'll look at Canada, look at Australia. What I found, the top 5 countries, except Finland, the only thing in common is that they all use chopsticks. If we began to use chopsticks, we'll all score very well. I think that's the first lesson. California, you're getting closer, right? You're getting closer with that. Using chopsticks, with 2 sticks to handle a Big Mac is a huge cognitive challenge. You can imagine that. It's not easy. But China was number 1. And China has become regarded as the global target of envy. Recently, the Harvard Education Press published a book that's really edited by Mark Tucker and Linda Darling-Hammond. All the education leaders have been publishing this book. It's called Surpassing Shanghai. America is getting less and less ambitious. That's what's complaining. In the 1960s, JFK said, let's send someone to the moon. That was pretty ambitious. Get to 1990s, get George W. Bush, he said, let's read. Reading could be ambitious to him, but not for everybody else. It should never be a national goal in that sense, right? Now you come today, let's go surpass Shanghai. That's a pathetic goal. There's nothing to surpass Shanghai in terms of test scores. This is getting worse. And actually, people are, by the way, China has become this great target. You look at Australians is getting as crazy as Americans too. A Grattan Institute came out with a report about a few weeks ago. By the way, they organized a seminar and asked him to lead it. Actually, last year, this report was based on that. Even the Prime Minister, Junior Gillard, was there. So we talk about this. They invited Korea, Singapore, China, and Hong Kong to be there. They're supposed to be the best performing countries. And then they follow up with a report. I was telling them it's not really, but they said, Australian students are 2 years behind Chinese students in mathematics. So China is very impressive. And now, we got American politicians. China is not only doing well in math, they're doing well in everything. 2 years ago, I think, Ed Rendell, from the former governor of Pennsylvania, do you remember that? In Philadelphia, they canceled a football game because of a winter storm. And the governor was really unhappy, and this is what he said. On radio, he said, "We've become a nation of wussies. The Chinese are kicking our butt in everything. If this was in China, do you think the Chinese would have called off the game? People would have been marching down to the stadium. They would have walked, and they would have been doing their calculus on their way." That's Pennsylvania. I'm glad you have some better governors here. By the way, China doesn't even play this, football thing. They play soccer, actually. And in England, in the UK, the new Education Secretary, Michael Gove, wrote in the Telegraph, said that, "I'm happy to confess I'd like us to implement a cultural revolution just like the one they've had in China. Like Chairman Mao, we've embarked on a long march to reform our education system." This is Michael Gove. I can't believe this won't emulate, this cultural revolution, which causes starvation, by the way. That's the destruction. So China is not really actually happy. Seriously, China, with all the Americans, Australians, and Brits celebrating Chinese, great performance, China didn't. China was worried. China was worried because they want a Steve Jobs. They're going through the reincarnation process right now. I don't know how far that can go with Steve Jobs in China. It's Premier Wen Jiabao said we need a Steve Jobs, but Kai-Fu Lee, who was a Google president for China, was an immigrant from Taiwan, came over to Tennessee, then went to Columbia and the Carnegie Mellon, and he was also vice president for Microsoft. But he said China will never have a Steve Jobs because of its education system. That's what he said. So the next Google and Apple will emerge, but not in China, not in 25 years, not in 50 years, unless it changes education system. And Steve Wozniak recently commented on BBC, said Singapore cannot have a Steve Jobs either because of its education system. Now here you have the two of the best education systems. How come they're unhappy? The next question is, why aren't the modern minority happy? Who is a modern minority? I am one. That's why I have to dress up every day just to show you a model. The modern minority is a racist term that's invented in the 1960s to say that why could the Asians make it? Other minorities couldn't. It's a very racist term and still uses today. But people still like it. They think the Asians, the Chinese, Japanese, and the Koreans, they do very well. Actually, if you look academically, they are somehow the best scoring subgroup in your school district. Many districts are going to China to buy them over so it can help them raise their AYP, they're doing all kind of purposes, And if you look at any of the national data, NAEP data, the Asian group, we outscore other minority groups. And if you look into other data, the Asians, about 5% of U.S. total population, but they take 15 to 25% of Ivy League enrollments, 24 at Stanford, 46 at UC Berkeley, UC Los Angeles, UC LA stands for UC lots of Asians. That's where you get all those things. But the problem is this. Less than 2% of any Fortune 500 company leadership positions are Asians. That's why we Asians, since after Tiger Mom wrote the book, right, began some soul searching. Do we think that's racism? Do we think it's a bamboo ceiling? Or do we think what can we do about this whole thing? Or is it our education? There's another question asked. Why is America still here? Well, the reason I ask this because when you hear today it says American education is getting worse, our students' achievement is in decline, I can tell you that's true. American education is not getting worse. It's not in decline. It has always been bad. It has been bad for a long time. It's always been bad. In the 1950s, it was worse than the Soviet Union. In the 1980s, worse than Japan, and now worse than China and India. Right? And the test scores. 1960s, the first international mathematics study, U.S. 12th graders ranked 12th out of 12 countries. That's pretty bad. Can't get worse than that, right? That's why we've been making ADP, adequate decade progress, since 1960s, if you look around. However, for about over 60 years, we've been producing bad students, bad test takers. But this country still stands here. According to President Obama, State of Union address, America still has the largest, most prosperous economy in the world. It is fact. It's factual, more factual than others. Okay. No workers are more productive, and no country has more successful companies. It is so why? So here we go. You got a country supposed to have best education system is unhappy. You got model minority supposed to have best education that's unhappy. Then you got a country who's had bad education for so long, it still stands here. How do we explain this? Well, the explanation has to do with this. Number one is, what is education about? What do you want to produce? This 2003 data from TIMSS data is very interesting. It's the third International Mathematics Science data, or Trends International Mathematics Science data. It sounds so cool, so they don't want to change the name. It's supposed to be FIMS again, fifth now, but we're still calling Trend, TIMSS. As standard, it's a pattern. Conceptually, US students' math scores are way below Asian countries. Always has way below. On the same assessment, asked two other questions, has to do with enjoyment and confidence. Do you think you can do mathematics? Do you like mathematics? American students, the data suggests, are ignorant but are very confident. Their confidence goes way above the Asians. If you look, Singapore was number one in terms of scores. Only 19% of their students said, I think I do well in math. Americans ranked almost like 30. 40% of Americans, I think I can do well in mathematics. It's a big difference. If you look at the data correlation, it's all negative. Countries have great math scores, have lower confidence, lower enjoyment, and higher scores and confidence. So, what do you want? The explanation is interesting. Americans like to think our confidence, our enjoyment has caused the low math abilities. So the solution is to make our kids less happy. And why? How do we do it? How do we become so confident? Because we don't know how bad we are. That's why. So what do? Bring in the standards. Bring in the test. Make the kids more humble. Tell them you're worse than your neighbor next day. You're being outscored. That's what we're doing in the past decades, right? Globally benchmark standards, a lot of assessments, so you know you're not good. Lower your confidence. And then another way said about American math students are happy, confident, but not good at math is because our teachers don't care about mathematical truth. We care about kids' feelings. Like standard example that gave you first grade, Jessica comes to class, or Tori maybe comes to class, and the teacher asks her, say, what's 1 + 1? Jessica or Tori says is 3. Most American teachers do not have the guts to say that's wrong. American teachers say, that's a very interesting answer. Can you say more about it? We call that inquiry-based learning, right? That's how we have this. So now we're doing professional development, make sure our math teachers don't do that, Be tough. We say, if you say that again, we'll spank you. So now that's what's happening with Asian cultures. On the other hand, said, we want confidence. Confidence is the underpinning of creativity and entrepreneurship. We want to reduce math content. We do not want standards. We want to de-emphasize the stakes of tests. We want to learn from America, tell our kids 1 + 1 = 3 is actually an interesting answer. That's what they're doing. The second explanation has to do with Lady Gaga. You guys don't have, no school, I don't know, New Tech High, you cannot have a Lady Gaga curriculum. Do you have a Lady Gaga curriculum? No. Lady Gaga is an exception. But how useful is Lady Gaga? With all those data, I saw those cool measures. Can you measure who is going to become a Lady Gaga? Then I was asked, I took Lady Gaga back to my village. I didn't really do that. By the way, I can't find a picture that's appropriate for public display of her. So I took her back to my village. I was asking, my father still lives in my village. He's 85. He drives a water buffalo. In my village, the most important subjects would be driving the water buffalo and carrying sweet potatoes on the bamboo pole. So that's the common core standards in our village. That's the common core. So that's the most valuable thing. So then I described to my father what Lady Gaga is. She is illiterate. He didn't know. I asked, how would Lady Gaga be useful? Would Lady Gaga be meeting any expectation in the village? He said, Lady Gaga wouldn't be very useful. She would be a problem for us. She wears meat. We don't have enough of that. And also she actually is too radical. She can't drive a water buffalo. So think about this. American education system, what we have so far is that a system that respects confidence and a system respects exceptions. And these are the people, the creative entrepreneur people we need to preserve. But unfortunately, American education is going the wrong way. And traditionally, we did not plan to educate these people either. They were simply exceptions and accidents. Today, in the 21st century, we need to be more deliberate, move accidents to design, to actually allow Lady Gagas to emerge and ensure confidence is a very important thing in our teaching. Thank you. Thank you.